Hello, everyone. Today, I'm going to be talking about personality profiles of the politically elite. What is personality? Personality in Chapter 14 is defined as a complex conception when an individual is capable of having possible selves, and hence viewed as an array of capacities, dispositions that may be engaged, primed, or activated depending on the situation or the listener. A simple example would be how you present yourself in front of an audience versus your close friends and family. What is the main argument of the chapter about personality? The main argument of chapter 14 is that in political psychology, one of the central axioms is that political outcomes are influenced by personality profiles of the politically elite. In my opinion, the psychological study lacks a lot of evidence and methods to replicate the study. Leaders and their ability to be psychological subjects. When we talk about and discuss great leaders and their abilities to influence decisions, we talk in a historical context as we are not able to answer the counterfactual questions of causality, how the outcomes would differ given a different circumstance or situation. Limitations of a psychological study. From a psychological spec, the great leaders were never able to fit inside psychological methods of assessment and measurement, and behavior psychologists have based their studies around the information that was already available. There are no primary studies or inquiries that have built a better argument or case of how personality could influence political outcomes. Arguments. Boundaries of influence of personality. This chapter has two boundaries around the argument that either the political outcome are merely the projection of a leader's personality or the simplistic view that individual personalities have no effect. Elements of personality. The chapter fundamentally divides personality into four different subjective elements: social context, traits, cognition, and motives. An example about personality profile. An example would be that the political career of Benito Mussolini, who was a well-known Italian dictator and fascist. In the years 1922 to 1937, he had an impressive line of accomplishments and tried to build a better economy and empire for Italy. After his meet with Adolf Hitler, the leader of Germany, in September of 1937, it was observed that after his return, Mussolini started alienating his supporters, adopting Nazi policies, and ruining Italy militarily and economically. Was it Hitler's personality that influenced Mussolini in such a way that he began making his political decisions from a Nazi perspective, or Hitler's personality had nothing to do with Mussolini's decisions and it was his own? Limitations. Lack of empirical evidence. I think the chapter lacks a lot of empirical evidence to make a generalization that personalities of elites influence politics. An empirical study usually takes a large target population and replicating the results to make sure it's reliable. There aren't enough leaders that might fit into a particular category to be studied. Example, leaders with narcissistic personality or leaders that have passed away. Psychologists aren't able to put leaders and elites through testing like personality testing, surveys, psychological interviews, because current and living leaders are protected from psychological experiments. The argument lacks validity and has a lot of researcher's bias involved, because the psychologist, while drawing on concepts of personality, often select whatever concept seems most promising for explaining the person they are studying, as their main source of information is secondary data and information produced by the media. If psychologists were to able to understand leaders through their speeches or biographies, there is heavy editing involved and is not an accurate measurement of personality. Conclusion. Subjectivity of personality. While the chapter discusses some interesting points on how historically there have been observed instances where personality has affected politics, it provides a very subjective and historical context. Analysis of personality. This type of research is qualitative and can be perceived different by individuals. Instead of having statistics, analysis, trends, and description, the psychologist has tried to interpret influence and effect of personality on politics. Importance of personality. This does not mean that personality simply doesn't mean anything in politics. It does have an authority in matters involving emotion, symbolic significance, conflict, and novel situations. Example, the reaction and presence created by Andrew Cuomo, the governor of New York, in the coronavirus crisis versus the reaction of the Trump administration for the same.